Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. We have a very special guest on today, Jaakko Jutila. Now, Jaakko, you are the VP of Customer Experience at Basware, and you're a SaaS company. And I'm going to ask you in just a minute if you could expand a little bit more on your background. You're an avid sportsman. You're a father. You have a beautiful family. We're going to be focusing today, though, on your experience, specifically in customer experience, and really helping break through the CX barrier, which is a lot of time the way the rest of the company and the C-suite perceives us and who we are, what our role is, and specifically not just a cost center to be contained, right? But a support center that supports not only every different customer, but every internal customer, the different departments, and actually aligns with the growth objectives and revenue objectives of the entire business. So we're going to start to unravel all of that in a second. But what I'd love to do is I'd love to give you an opportunity, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit more on your background.
Yes, Steve, very pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting. Yes, as said, I've been working with Basware for 7 years now in customer support. And all the time there, I'm in different kind of roles here within support. All the time, of course, focusing on the customer experience, which, as you said, it's really, really important. I would say every day is becoming more and more important. I'm very lucky really to work on that area. Before that, of course, I also worked actually in customer interface very heavily. I was working at Accenture for 10 years and different kind of roles there as well. So, I think throughout my career, I've been lucky to be able to work with, I'd say the 3 key things I find myself very interesting and important: people and leadership. And then, of course, working with customers, so customer experience as well.
So people's at the core of all of this, right? The high performance teams are what make great companies, and meeting the needs of our customers is what ensures our future. But that is an equation that everyone will nod their head. In fact, there's never been an executive at a company that said, we're not customer obsessed, right? But it's to the degree that we execute on that. And that execution, we play a big part in it. But there is a mindset that we have to shift too often. And that mindset is that we're a cost center. And with that then comes all these KPIs about managing costs, reducing average handle times, reducing everything, right? Where we know that's not necessarily the right thing to do to create the relationship, maintain the relationship, nurture that relationship, and therefore have long-term happy customers, that which every C-suite executive would get this impacts NRR, net recurring revenue, right? We have to have customers that are happy and want to stay with us. And we're at the forefront of that. So I'd love to just kind of hear your perspective on what is that mindset that it can kill growth, right? If we're looked upon as a cost center, and we're required and we're compensated as a cost center, we'll be a good cost center, right? But we need to grow beyond that. Why do you think it's this way to begin with, this mindset?
That's a very, very good question, Steve. It's from the past. It's coming from the very distinct or siloed, let's say, culture in the past. And, as you said it yourself, the customer experience is very, very important here. Yeah. And, support, many times I've seen it as well happening. Support is considered just support, right? So your task is just to make sure customer can use our products. If they have some issues, they reach out to us, but that's it. And that results in cost savings, or let's say squeezing and focusing heavily on its cost center, so minimizing the cost. And it results in situations where we optimize our efficiency, optimize the performance, but only from the internal perspective. And we kind of forget the customer there. And then we are, squeezed up to a point where we can barely keep our nose above the water so that the customers don't complain too much. So it's still in a level which is acceptable. Obviously, there would be so much more to achieve if we would look into it from the perspective, hey, customer support is by far, I think, a function in an organization which has the most daily interaction with customers. And if you think about how much we could, if we invest a bit more in those interactions or invest a bit more into our people, how much we could actually identify areas which actually could accelerate growth, but also, of course, improve the customer experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. So basically, there's a big internal mindset or perception barrier that we have to address. We never got into this part of the business because we thought we had to be salespeople, but we need to sell ourselves. We need to advocate for ourselves. If we're going to gain more resources, we're going to help the company even better. We need to be our own best advocates, which means we need to sell ourselves internally, which means we need to speak the language of the different departments and what's important to them and how to position ourselves. We think about that with our external customers. What are their needs and how do we talk their language, right? But we have internal customers that are equally as important because that's the entire experience is all departments working together, right, to serve the customer. So tell me a little bit about, for executives, it lots of times comes down to the dollar sign, right? You know, and I think you called it the dollar sign dilemma and like quantifying the customer experience impact on the business. And how can we even think about starting to do that?
Yeah, this is the one thing I constantly keep getting to when I discuss with my peers in other companies in similar roles. I mean, I yet myself don't have a perfect formula of converting customer experience, let's say improvement, to a dollar sign, which obviously our leadership and especially CFO understands. What we've seen, of course, at Basware is that when the customer satisfaction has increased, it's, of course, many aspects, many activities that have improved or significantly contributed to that. But of course, big part is played by support. We have improved over years very much. And we've seen the correlation in the retention rates of our customers. And of course, for a SaaS company, retention is absolutely critical, right?
Absolutely.
And I think when the leadership and executive suite sees that, hey, there might be some correlation between support satisfaction and the retention, even though you haven't kind of cracked exactly the formula, if you like, but there is a correlation and that starts to be seen there. And that is one way, in my opinion, to help raising the awareness that, hey, maybe you might want to start considering support, not only a cost center, but actually something which would be an engine for growth as well.
So, it's interesting. I like what you're going there is, I think you use the word translating. Like we've got to translate what we do into information in the way that they're going to understand it. And here's the thing, to be these internal advocates and internal salesperson, there is a world of research out there. If you went on to AI and talk about the incremental impact on revenue of increased CSAT scores or increased NPS scores, there's a ton of information out there that correlates those two. Like we don't have to make these numbers up, right?
Yeah.
But the story it can be told. And it's really interesting. I read this recently in a Harvard Business Review article. We remember things 22 times better if it's told to us in the form of a story. So tell the story, right? And use industry stats and industry studies that are coming from the biggest consulting firms in the world, right? That it's irrefutable. If we do this, every 1% increase in our CSAT scores should impact our net revenue retention by this amount, right?
Yeah.
And so that way it puts it into okay, this is a revenue driving function, right? We're very rarely associated with revenue creation, but we're directly tied to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, that's what I took away is like, from what you're saying here is we got to work as hard at making the case, building the templates, the communication, the knowledge base with our external customers. We got to work really hard to do that. That means researching. That means putting the case together. That means telling the story well, right? So I love where you're going here. You talked about something called a seamless journey architecture in our previous conversation.
Yeah.
And what I loved about this is we're kind of moving now from, okay, we got to make our case. We got to be able to communicate it well, to basically identifying the critical integration points that the organization often overlooks. So you can tell the story, you can say, this is how we impact it, but then you got to translate it to specifically what we're doing inside of our company. And you talked about these critical integration points, the seamless journey architecture. If you could just explain what that is and what you do, that would be great.
Let's see if we have enough time for that. No, of course. I mean, I think there are two layers there. Of course, the customer journey, the customer visible journey is the most important. So it needs to start from the very first discussions with the prospect customer to understand their business drivers or those metrics that they're looking if they decide to invest in our services, right? And it needs to start from there, over to sales, then to professional services when the implementation is being done. All the time the same metrics, we are working towards the same metrics. Then it goes to production, support takes over. Support needs to be aware of those, what are the key business KPIs for this customer. And of course, eventually at the same time, the customer success as well, which is then, responsible of renewing, helping the customer to realize even more value. So that's the one layer. But then the other dimension, I would say, is all the functions which are not in that customer interface. And in support, it means, for example, being very closely connected to our department, because they are the ones actually, if there's some significant issue with our products, a bug, for example, new feature coming out which is not fully working or something like that, that needs to be, close collaboration with R&D, for example, and other functions as well. This is, in my opinion, building towards seamless customer value and seamless customer experience as well.
So you painted a very vivid picture there of not operating in a silo. We get tickets, we answer, we keep the customer happy, leave us alone, we're doing a good job. I got a very vivid picture of collaboration, right? And everybody agreeing in the same direction that we're headed and how we can all support each other. There's going to be a lot of people that are listening in saying, I'm having a hard time getting the attention of the other departments, R&D or whoever it is, right? Yeah. What kind of advice would you have for them in order to create those cross-functional relationships that last? Like, you're not saying this because it only comes around when we do a new product launch. This is like a continual collaboration, right? This is a constant motion that you're doing. How would you recommend, if you're talking to an audience here and saying, here's how you can start creating these relationships?
To be honest, we had quite a long journey with that, but I think we have achieved something here at Basware as well. So first thing is to find those people who, have the mindset in the other function. Let's say R&D, for example. When you get some key people, the critical mass, to understand that we are here together actually. Of course, support has their own targets and R&D has their own targets, all priorities. But at the end of the day, what we are here for, everyone, is the customers. And if we together can the customer experience good or customer happy, everyone wins. But it takes time. You need to find a person. I think that's one key thing here. You need to find that or those persons in the other function who have that kind of influence there that they can start shifting the mindset in the other function. That's one thing. And of course, then sharing the credits when there is some success. For example, at Basware, we initiated this kind of case reduction approach a couple of years back, where we, together with R&D, try to identify those areas that generate a lot of customer cases and together work to eliminate them by fixing a product, certain feature, making it better, improving the self-service opportunities. And then when we achieve something meaningful, obviously we celebrate it together. And then it kind of feeds itself to a next win, if you like.
So you kind of I'm getting the picture you're painting here is that you're pick the place where you think you could have the biggest win to start out with. Create a win. create a cross collaboration, get them singing your praises. And that's going to make it so much easier to roll out to the next department, right? And so on. So kind of pick and choose your battles and where you can get the most traction to begin with. And you've mentioned R&D a number of times. So many organizations have no connection between R&D and the product roadmap, the product planning to address the concerns that we get every day, right? It's a great place to start. A great place to start.
It's a great place to start for sure. In the past, we needed to squeeze ourselves into those tables with product management where new features, new significant functionality are being designed. Right. And many times when it was in production, when we got to know enough about that, and then we saw that, hey, there might be this and that could have been thought through a bit better from the customer and from the customer support or supportability perspective. Now we are invited to those tables, which is making it again much, much easier.
Yeah. So every conversation these days has to have an AI component to it. Right? And so, I want to talk a little bit about, AI, and you called it, I think, smart automation without alienation, because a big part of adopting AI is to serve the customer better, but serving the internal customers should be a part of an AI implementation too, right? And learning, we have the opportunity to learn in a way at a scale that we haven't had before. So give me your thoughts internally about kind of like how you're thinking about AI and adopting it.
What I like about AI is that you can really start small with very low risk and then expand. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't start from the customer interface directly, but exactly as you said, how do we harness the AI to serve our internal needs first? Of course, in support, it's straightforward. You can use AI to provide more meaningful content for support agents in the form of knowledge-based articles or something that they don't take that much time to search for those. Also, you can use AI to improve the quality and still that the AI is not exactly in the customer interface. Again, what we are using in Basware is we have an AI alerting if there's some cases likely to be escalated, and then we can still address that before the customer actually escalates. So when something is going slightly south, AI will help us getting back on track before something tangible happens in a negative way. So all of those are obviously improving the customer experience, but they are behind the customer interface. And that's a good place to start, because if you screw up something with AI, it's still not directly, there's still some person in between who will obviously then just ignore those weird hallucinations of the AI and still provide good customer experience.
Well, I like the direction that you're going here in kind of wading in on AI, because I know all of us, we get tons of vendors calling us all the time, right? And the latest AI solution, this is good. And it's like overwhelming. It's completely overwhelming. And it feels like it's going to just take over everything. But you talk about not only testing it, using it internally, but you also talk about having, before implementing, and optimizing the CX, you got to have a real foundation on your own processes and building that before you start making big changes and introducing AI. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, about kind of the importance of that process foundation, if you could.
Yes, and I think it can be, Steve, I think it can be started from two different directions, but I think the main point, in my opinion here, is that you need both of these components at some point. So what we did is that we first built the foundation. We made the global process for the whole global support organization, unified all the same tools, same ways of working, everything, and kind of made the machine to be consistent across all the customers, all the products, all the regions. And then it's much easier not only to scale when you need to, but also start implementing new things such as AI, because everyone are already working the same way, same tools, same processes, and scaling that also with AI is, so much easier.
Yes. You got to have your foundation set before you start adding things on top of it and optimizing it. And, it's AI is kind of like the sexy, shiny object. But if you don't have, like, nobody feels, and I wanted to ask you this question too, because part of that process foundation, AI is a garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't give
Yeah.
it the right data, right, doesn't matter how great the AI tool is and what it does and what it promises if it doesn't have that right foundation, which is data.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you just a question on because as we all got into this business, we didn't think we were going to be salespeople, right? We're going to have to advocate for ourselves constantly. We also didn't think that we're going to be big data people, right?
Yes.
But like on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is just a data strategy as a part of this foundation for not only optimizing, but then adding AI on top of it and kind of our future roadmap of internally what we're trying to do here? Like 1, it's not important at all. 10, it's vital to that foundation that we need to build. Where would you put it on that scale?
I would put it somewhere towards 10, maybe not a 10, but I mean, I think you can get to certain level with AI, with mediocre data structure, data governance in place. But I think it starts really to limit then at some point. And that some point is then when you need to go back, hey, okay, maybe we need to work more on data. So yes, you can start without it, but you can get only so far. So therefore, the need for data governance, data structure is actually very important because you obviously want to have the sky only as a limit where you can use AI, but the data is going to limit you if you don't have that in order, right?
Absolutely.
I didn't give you a number, but I think you got.
I think you said it was close to 10.
Exactly.
I'll give it a 9.2 or something.
My bad. Yeah.
Sometimes some of the most important questions I can ask is, what haven't I asked? Like, what haven't we covered that you would like to talk to your peers about and make sure that was a part of our conversation here today?
Good one, Steve. I think we kind of touched upon it a bit, but I still want to highlight the importance of the mindset. I mean, that's how you make good customer experience. That's how you make customers happy. And the thing there is that no matter how good processes you have, no matter how good, ways of working, if your people, and now I'm not only talking about those who are working in customer interface, but the whole company, if the mindset is not really customer centric, again, you are getting only so far. So that's, I think, still worth highlighting here that, the mindset. And again, the question is, how do you get there? I don't know if you have some good ideas. I have some experience here, but what do you think in your experience, how to get to the right mindset with other people?
It's the mindset shift so much is based on preconceived notions and perceptions that are lingering, right? And so we come in and we just know we have to dig ourselves out before we can start to make some headway. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from our conversation, right? Is that because we all nod our heads. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to on this podcast that are in your position that are like, we need to rise in importance. We need to be seen as not a support function, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to kind of maybe ask my last question. And, we've talked about so much here today. In our human brains, we're only designed to retain about 2 or 3 things at a time, max. So I wanted to ask you, if there was one takeaway that you wanted your peers, the executives that are watching this podcast or consuming it today, what would be the one thing that you'd want them to take away?
I think getting back to, spotting those people who have the mindset, the right mindset across the organization and using them as kind of change agents, but also using them as bright spots to expand that thing to the whole organization. That's, I think, the thing. And I mean, some people have the mindset naturally, some might learn it, but then some also don't have it. And then I think your success depends on how well you utilize those people who actually have the mindset to start with. They might be hidden somewhere, but you will spot them in most, surprising roles, but you can always find some good use for those people to use as bright spots. So I think that's one key takeaway.
I think it's phenomenal because we all need a place to look to start, right? And we need internal champions. We need
Yes.
internal allies. So I think it's a great takeaway. And, I just wanted to say that here's one thing that I know is going to happen. People are going to have questions. So I wanted to know, is it okay if we give out a link to your LinkedIn profile so that people can reach out and find you and ask questions?
Yes, absolutely. That would be great. Actually, I'm looking forward to all the collaboration. And yes, please.
Fantastic. So, the mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives and different insights from all of our experience from all over the world. You're in Finland, right? I'm in the United States, and we talk to people everywhere
Yep.
about our common problems, right? And how we solve those, take on those challenges head on. And if we do it well. I call it the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I think you were just a very important part of that tide today. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.